10 years ago, Nicholas Paxson came to Grand Rapids for his last treatment for addiction recovery. And today, he's celebrating a decade of sobriety and now releasing a new book that tells the story about how he turned his life around. He's joining us this morning to talk about his memoir, Inner Space, Don't Believe Everything You Think, and his mission to bring hope to others still struggling. We were talking a little bit before this. Let's start at the very beginning. You were drinking and you were dabbling in drugs here and there. Kind of just tell us your story, like from your younger days. What was that like?
First of all, Tanner, thanks for having me on. It did start off as fun, normal kind of teenage stuff. And then by the time I was 18 years old, it was kind of evident that I was drinking heavier than the rest of my friends. My dad was an alcoholic, and I knew that going into this, and it really still had no impact on me. You know, my mind kept telling me, Nick, you're not going to be like your dad, you're going to do things different. And it also kept telling me that I'm not an alcoholic and that this is fine. And things steadily got worse and progressed. And I got in a lot of trouble from this. And the whole time, even while I was in jail, my mind was still telling me that I was fine. So I essentially believed everything that went on in my head. I feel like I was hypnotized by my thinking until I was 30 years old. Out of options, I'd realized that this thing was lying to me. And it had been lying to me for 12 years.
What was that moment that kind of made you realize when you were 30, this is a problem? What was that moment when you were able to kind of stop denying it almost?
Yeah, well, I was trying to stop drinking and I was trying to stop using drugs. And the more I tried to slow down, the more I actually sped up. So it was a real bizarre inner thing that was happening. You know, there were a handful of events where I knew that I needed to stay sober, and I ended up drinking even more. So the more I fought it, the more I drank. And then in the end, I kind of threw my arms up and gave up on Nick. I didn't know what to do at that time. And I suppose that was what they refer to as surrender. I just gave up the fight, and I could actually hear my mind lying to me for the first time because I was hearing a different narrative in my mind than what my eyes and ears were observing. So there was a massive disconnect from reality, and I actually spotted it. And I knew I needed some serious help. My mom found a treatment center here in Grand Rapids that I went to, plugged into the recovery community out here, which is great, by the way. I was supposed to go back to Detroit after treatment, but I kind of fell in love with West Michigan, and I'm glad I stayed.
Yeah.
Because my life transformed just by applying spiritual principles to my daily living, and my mind changed, which I didn't think would ever happen.
Yeah, your journey is so interesting, and particularly, you know, you talk about some of the low points in your life during that period of when you were just not realizing that there was an issue there. And we actually have a picture of your mugshot from 2007. This is not the same Nick that we see here today, right?
Yes.
What was going on here? What was the scenario that kind of landed you in that position?
Yeah, I remember that. That was my second DUI. And I actually got in a high-speed chase back in one of the suburbs in Detroit, and I was already out on bond from another charge. I was in Macomb County 2 weeks prior to this. You know, I had drugs on me, I had an open container in the vehicle, and my body made a decision without my permission, and I got into a high-speed chase. And I remember getting released from jail in 2007. My parents bailed me out again. And I could see my mom out there waiting for me, and she was out there crying, and I had no idea what to say to her. And I walked out, and I remember both of us sitting there hugging, and I think we both knew that something else had possession of my life.
Yeah.
And that should have been like my big wake-up call, and unfortunately, that kind of behavior went on for 6 more years until the pain got so excruciating that I just gave up on Nick.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you entered treatment, you know, recovery is not a straight line. It is, you know, it's a very winding path, I'm sure, that you've experienced in that journey. Talk about that recovery journey.
Well, Tanner, I can tell you it was the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
By far. I had to ignore everything that went on in my head for the first 2 years of my sobriety, because I knew my thinking would lead me right back to drinking and drugs. So it was very difficult to ignore this little gremlin in my head, and it's still in there today. Luckily, it's not telling me to drink and use drugs. But for example, I didn't want to come on here and do this today, but someone suggested that I come on here and talk about this mental health stuff and promote the book and recovery.
Yeah, how do you get from recovery to writing something like this, putting your thoughts on the page in hopes to help someone else?
In 2013, I was in jail, and I remember this guy, Tim, came in there, and he talked about addiction and a solution to it. And for the first time in my life, I had hope. So that was why I wanted to write this. A few people that have heard my story suggested, Nick, you need to try writing about your story. It's a pretty miraculous journey of hope. And I know there's millions of people out there struggling in our country with addiction and think that there's no way out of it. And I used to think the same thing. I knew that I could not get out of this, but some magic happened, you know, and my brain functions different today. And, you know, I wrote a chapter in here about neuroplasticity, and it's essentially the brain's ability to change itself functionally and structurally. And I know I have a new mind today, you know, and we have to live our way into right thinking. And I guess we do that by applying spiritual principles to our daily living, even though a lot of days I don't want to apply these principles, but it's what triggers the brain change.
Yeah, again, it's that winding path, you know, that you are probably still on to this day, you know, and it's great that you've been able to articulate that in a book.
Yeah, being able to completely turn your life around, but also just having these incredible milestones along the way where you went back to school, you wrote this book. Can you talk a little bit about those milestones?
Oh yeah, especially school. That is the funniest thing to me, because I remember my editor, when she was reading this, she's like, Nick, you need to be in school for this. And I almost laughed out loud because I hated school. No way, no how was I going back to school. And I remember my first day of college, that little gremlin was saying, Nick, it's too late, you're too old, and you're too dumb. Go back home. And fast forward, I
Fast forward right there.
And when I left Grand Valley, they gave me this biomedical science graduate of distinction. And when I got the email, I thought, they must have the wrong person. Nick? You know, but, and then at GRCC, I got some prestigious awards. So my point is my mind still lies to me today, but I have to ignore it. And it's really just a fear mechanism that I think's in everybody.
Yeah.
You know, we all got a little fear gremlin in us that tells us we can't do something, don't do it, you're gonna embarrass yourself. Yeah, I have to ignore this little monster in my head.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask our director, Rory, to play along for a second. Pull up the mug shot one more time. And then right after that, pull up the photo from his wedding. These are two completely different Nicks.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And it was a fairy tale wedding, too.
Yeah, it looks like it. It looks like a dream. What would you say to the person struggling right now in the position that Nick was in 2007 to the Nick in that photo on your wedding day?
Oh, that they're not alone. I thought I was so alone with this addiction stuff. And I met thousands of people in West Michigan who actually gave me hope on my journey too. And they used to drink and drug the way I used to, and I could see they were living productive, confident, content lives. And I thought, yes, I want this.
Yeah.
And I took some suggestions from people, like going back to school, you know, and applying to school in Chicago for a very competitive perfusion program. That was another thing I thought I couldn't do, and it happened.
Yeah.
So,
And looking at you, I mean, here today, I hope you know you've accomplished so much here. And of course, with this book, it comes out Saturday.
yes.
Talk about the book. What sort of lessons, what sort of stories, what sort of path are you taking the reader through?
Yeah, I really tried to hone in on my psychology throughout my addiction and even into my recovery, and beat the drum that this is a thinking disease. And you don't have to buy into all the drama, but when I was 2 years sober, I disconnected from my thought process, and it was a very profound spiritual experience, and I realized that my thoughts can be very manipulative. And today I have an ability to be objective towards my thoughts, which I never had prior to coming into recovery. But it is a thinking disease, and there is hope. I want people to read this and think, man, if Nick can come out of this, then so can I.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that thoughts can be manipulative, and that seems like it ties back into the title, The Inner Space, Don't Believe Everything You Think. What inspired that title in the first place?
Well, because I still have to apply that don't believe everything I think principle. And I guess what inspired it is I did believe everything I thought in my 20s. If I thought it, it was reality, and that was not the case. And I honestly don't know what's going on in other human beings. I suppose everybody has to be objective towards their thoughts, but I just did not have that ability. And today I do have that ability. I can tell kind of when my mind's lying to me. And even when things aren't going Nick's way and I'm going through difficult times, my mind doesn't say drink or drug, and I'm amazed that it has transformed like that. So especially the people that are suffering with addiction, I want them to realize that this is a thinking disease, and you don't have to buy into the little gremlin in there.
Yeah, we're getting ready to run out of time, but I want to make sure I ask you, this is coming out on your 10-year sobriety anniversary. Obviously, that's got to mean something. You wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't coming out on that day, but what does it mean to you to get to that 10-year milestone and also be releasing such a big part of your life here to the public?
Yeah, it's ironic that, 10 years to the day of my sobriety anniversary, this book came out, and then I'm here with you guys. I couldn't have planned it better myself. So that's been another big part of my journey, is just having faith and keep moving forward and trying new things. I didn't think I was a writer, and here's
and now look at you.
Yeah, I didn't think this was going to happen,
Yeah.
But
and your journey is such an inspiration too, considering where you started, where you are now. Congratulations to you, because this is awesome. And by the way, the book will be available on Amazon starting on Saturday, right?
Correct.
Do you have any signing events coming up that you are going to be doing?
Yes, we do. Kent District Library, the Wyoming branch, on July 2nd. It's a free event. Anyone and everyone can come. And I'll kind of talk about the book. We'll do a Q&A. I'll sign some books if anybody wants some signed copies. Everyone's invited.
All right. Well, Nicholas, we appreciate your time. Congratulations. And of course, we'll have that all available for you on 13onyourside.com.